Hope everybody's doing well on this particular Thursday afternoon. It's time for World Politics, where we talk about political issues and things that are going on the political front. I've got one of the founders of the network with me, and we'll have some discussions around some of these issues, and we'll see who else joins us as well, and all in that space. But definitely, there is an issue that a lot of people talk about, and we oftentimes hear it talked about here in the United States. That whole idea of immigration and how to deal with immigration and all in that space. So it looks like it's not just an issue here in the United States, but it's an issue around the world. So there are a number of countries that are dealing with this idea of immigration, what to do with the immigrants, and whether you want to have open borders or not have open borders, and all in that space. So I was seeing that one of the stories that I was going to talk about is that Rishi Sunak, who is the prime minister over there in England, was saying that it's an issue there as well, and he's appeared to blame his Tory predecessors in No 10 for record high net migration numbers. So the prime minister said he would do what is necessary to bring legal migration down, but stressed he had inherited these very large numbers. It's interesting how everybody claims that they've inherited numbers no matter what the issue is, and all along those lines. So, speaking to reporters doing a visit to Guildford this morning, Mr. Sunak said the levels of legal migration into this country are simply too high. I've inherited these very large numbers, and I'm determined to do what is necessary to bring them down to sustainable levels. Mr. Sunak is under growing pressure from Tory MPs to bring forward new measures to curb illegal migration after he hit a record high of 745,000 last year. Asked what Mr. Sunak meant when he said he had inherited the figures, the prime minister's official spokesman said, factually, those numbers were large when he became prime minister. So, like I said, this is an issue that a lot of people are talking about, not just here in the United States, but other places as well. I know I've had the pleasure of talking to some people from London, and some of them have come from other places to get opportunities and to get things that they want to deal with, even in the migration lanes as well. So it is always interesting to hear what people have got to say about these very important issues, no matter where they might be coming from, and all along those lines, because it is just one of those fascinating conversations that exist and that people are oftentimes talking about and trying to find out how to deal with them, and all in that line. So it's always fascinating to hear what folks have got to say in that lane and all in that space. But like I said, I've talked to some people that even moved there to go into nursing, meaning England, or medicine, or a number of other kinds of fields that they want to go to. And some of them were coming from Asian countries, some of them were coming from African countries, and other countries as well. So a lot of times people are coming there because they want opportunities and all in that space. So I'll bring in the Kim Calhoun, and I've got Sasha Starr, and I know that Sasha actually moved to Canada, and I don't know all of the reasons he moved there, but he was originally from Ukraine, and of course he had worked in the Russian government and a number of other places, and all along those lines. But I just found that very fascinating that there were folks that are interested in moving to places, and the issue of immigration and migration has come up in a number of places around the world. Is an issue that I hear a lot of politicians globally talking about, and all in that kind of space. It doesn't matter whether they are in the European theater, and I'm sure even some of the African countries are seeing people migrate into their countries as well. Sometimes they're encouraging people, because I know that in, like, I believe it was Ghana, they were asking people to come back to Africa that were of African American descent, and all in that space. And I think there have been some Latin American countries that have been encouraging people to come back to lands that were part of their heritage. And there's some people that are considering it. I know that you don't have Colombia in your heritage, but you've considered about going there. And one of our other hosts has also talked about going back home to Colombia, because Vivian Andrade is from Colombia, and all in that space. And she's talked about how much she loves that area and how she would like to go back. Of course, on the last show, we recently learned that she is engaged now too, so she's got to see if the husband wants to go as well. So big congratulations to Viviana on her new engagement, because I think it happened over the holiday season and all in that space. But before that happened, I do know she had talked about going back home to Colombia and even living there in Colombia. And I've got friends that have had properties or have even bought properties in places like Costa Rica, and I think Brazil and a number of other places. And sometimes family gets in the way, because I had one friend that was dearly considering moving to Costa Rica, but they wanted the kids to get older and then make the decision if they wanted to move with them as older adults and not take them as kids, because they would have been like around the teenage years and all in that space. But I'll bring you back up, Kim, and see your thoughts around immigration. Oh, sorry. So I'll let you bring up Sasha while we wait for Kim as well, because Kim was actually on a phone call. But like I said, I know world politics, we talk about a number of things, and we'll get to some other world politic things as well. But that was something that I had seen in the news, and I know it's been an issue in Canada as well, where not just immigration into the United States, but also immigration into Canada. I think that Mr. Trudeau has had some thoughts around how to deal with immigration, even in the country that you now call home. So what is your thoughts around the world political leaders trying to figure out whether they want to have open borders or whether they want to have closed borders and not letting in as many immigrants? And we do know sometimes the immigrants are because of running away from political situations. As a matter of fact, I think there are some people that literally were draft dodging both from Russia and Ukraine and going to different countries because they didn't want to fight those wars and everything. But I'm just wondering your thoughts around immigration in general and how countries are dealing with it.
Well, I think immigration is a very complicated process, and it's different for different people. And I don't think that my example is a very typical one, because I think very few people would go through what I had to go. And these days, today, most of the people, they're coming to countries like Canada or US or England or somewhere else, and their goal is to have every day uh, Burger King, French fries, and Coca Cola or Pepsi, depends where you're going. And that's all what they care. They don't care about the history of the countries that they came to. They don't sometimes even learn the language of the countries that they came to. They don't care about traditions, religions, or just anything. As long as they have their burger, fries, and Coke, they're okay. And that's all what they care about. It's majority. I'm not saying that it's all people like that, but majority is. And I just don't understand the reason, except, for example, Canada really needs people to come. So Canada has a very sophisticated system of what people are being selected for immigration process. It depends on their profession, the knowledge of the language, their age, of course, their marital status. There's a complicated system. You may say that it's in a way discriminating system. In some ways, yeah, you can say so. But Canada wants to do what's good for its country and its citizens. And the last thing what Canada needs is to accept people who are completely ignorant about Canadian history, Canadian way of life, and so on. So this people are being vetted out quite early in the process. So, well, some people can still make it to Canada in spite of all that, but most of the time the choice is really proper as well as it's designed.
And
Um,
Sasha, along those lines, go ahead. But along those lines, and maybe we sometimes talk about political kind of gamemanship that goes on and everything. And I'm going to tell you about something that's going on here in the United States. And I definitely want to hear from Kim about this, but also you as well. But apparently, earlier today, as a record number of migrants are going across the southern U.S. border, many seeking asylum, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas has told the country, meaning the U.S., that the country's broken immigration system is in need of a top to bottom update. So he's actually offered a kind of a trade in support for Biden kind of agreeing to some of the regulations that the Republicans would like in terms of the rights and all of those things, that they might be willing to have a trade. So pushed to the negotiation table by the Republicans, the Biden administration is considering the long shot effort as the price to be paid for the president's $106 billion year-end request for Ukraine, Israel, and national security needs. So it sounds like they are asking the Republicans to back this if they want to have certain things going on in this immigration overhaul. So rather than undertake a comprehensive immigration overhaul, Congress is scrambling in a few short weeks for a deal that would greatly restrict the asylum and humanitarian parole process used by thousands to temporarily stay in the U.S. while their claims are being processed in the backlog system, if they can get this kind of support for the Ukrainian and Israeli aid as well. So it looks like they are trying to use it as a chip, if we can use the poker analogy, in the game and everything, to force a vote and to force a possible favorable vote in that way. So matter of fact, Republican Senator James Lankford, who's there in Oklahoma, said, we're not going to try to secure other countries and not secure ours, as he rolled out the Senate GOP's border efforts earlier this month. We're at this point for 3 years, we've been saying, what are we going to do to secure the country? What are we going to do this? And every year it's getting worse. And I do know that there is a core group of senators that has been eyeing a deal that would provide money for the wars overseas in exchange for changes in the asylum process, and in particular, humanitarian parole, which has been a go-to tool by the Biden administration to manage the quell of migrants at the border, but is being challenged in court. So it sounds like they are using it, like I said, as a poker chip and all in that space. I know that there were some candidates that have run that have even talked about using our military as a way to quell migration as well. So what are y'all's thoughts about using migration as a political tool? And I'll start with you, Kim.
They're going to use anything as a political tool. They're going to use any issue, any thing going on, and it will be used to do that. I think what we need to do is just figure out what the issues are for the people and help the people that need help, period. There doesn't need to be, nothing needs to be used for political. It just needs to stop. And we just need to look at the problems we have, find the solutions, and fix them. I mean, that's the easy thing right there. We have people who want to migrate here. We have people that are already here, that have been here for a very, very long time, that should receive some kind of citizenship by now, but they haven't. And we need to fix that. We need to fix a lot of things that are just sitting out in the open. But to make these issues a political propaganda sales pitch, and I think it's, because we've got stupid minds in this country, and, people are simple minded and they're easy to manipulate. So they're going to use these things to manipulate the votes. Just like, they tell everyone, that the economy was better under Trump. It wasn't. It's just, unfortunately, by the time Biden came in, that's when the mess rolled over. So, I just don't think we need to be using migration or immigration, any of it, as a political tool.
Yeah, I don't know what Sasha thinks about that, but I do know that even at the beginning of the Ukrainian war, and it's one of the things that they talk about, even with Biden, that he tapped the parole program for the Ukrainians that were fleeing to the West after Putin's invasion back in 2022, and he's also been used to allow Afghan and Cubans, Venezuelans, Haitians, and Nicaraguans to remain temporarily in the U.S. without threat of deportation. Because like I said, a number of people have been, and I've stated this to both you and Ivan, very brave in terms of staying in their country and fighting against that government, and I would use the term totalitarian government of Russia and all in that space. But there are sometimes people that, for whatever reasons, want to escape, and they might come to the West, and they can use the notion of staying here temporarily because they don't want to be deported back to a government that might put them in the military and to fight these wars and all in that space. I imagine, and I don't know this for a fact, that there might even be some people coming from Israel to the West and definitely to Europe as well, because they are trying to avoid the war. Some people might call those people draft dodgers. I know we used that term back during the Vietnam War and everything, but there are folks that are able to stay into countries because they don't want to fight the war, and maybe they've got moral reasons or other reasons that they are choosing not to fight, and all in that space. But what is your thought? Do you consider those people draft dodgers? Because I imagine there's some people even there in Canada that might have been avoiding the war, whether they're avoiding it from the Russian or the Ukrainian side, and have come to the West and are using some of those rules in order to stay in said countries. But I was just wondering your thoughts around that, and whether you personally consider them draft dodgers.
Well, if you speak about Israel, when they started mobilization after October 7th, they wanted to mobilize 300,000 people. They actually got 360,000 people. And a lot of people were flying to Israel with the first available plane in order to get into army and confirm their duties. Now, with Ukraine is a different situation. There are not too many Ukrainians living outside of Ukraine to begin with. Very early, women and children were evacuated mostly to Poland, but some other countries as well. Men were not allowed to leave Ukraine. And the situation actually virtually didn't change much in all that time. So the way Ukrainian war is developing, it's a huge question mark right now, huge one, because obviously the strategy before several months ago, strategy of Ukraine was relying on help from the West, primarily United States. And although the help was coming, but it was most of the time very late. It's exactly a case of too little, too late. And right now, it's complete disarray. It's unclear whether the help will be continued, to what degree, and therefore Ukraine cannot make any decent plans for near future or even for next year, because it's unclear what it can rely on with the United States. United States is not a reliable partner for various reasons, not that by design or by simply being bad people or anything like that. It's just a fact. That's what's happening. And you have to adjust your strategy and figure out what to do next. On the other hand, the help from European countries now getting more and more active and much more sizable. The Germany just published a report that if Ukraine will fail in next few months or so, right now Germany has 3 to 7 years to prepare for a Russian attack. And 3 to 7 years is not such a long time, by the way. However, if the Ukraine will fail, then it's down to 1 to 3 years. And
Wow.
Germany, I don't think that they will be able to prepare to Russian assault in 1 year. It's not going to happen. So
It's
now,
interesting.
we and European countries are sending all they can to Ukraine to continue fight.
Hey,
Yes.
Sasha and Kim, this is for both of you. I was actually, every once in a while, I'm invited, as I'm sure you are as well. Maybe you can get some consulting jobs on occasion and everything, but I'm invited to come onto podcasts that are not associated with necessarily Pod TV. So a friend of mine had asked me if I would come on a audio podcast that they do, and she's been on our show, Angela Butler, and everything. And she raised an interesting question to me, and I'll raise it to y'all as well, which is that with all that is going on in the world, and with the money that is going on, and with the issues that are happening in the United States, a lot of people, as you've even pointed out, Sasha, can't afford a certain amount of money to even pay for their basic bills and all along those lines. And a lot of people are dealing with housing, even here in this area, meaning in the United States. And me and Kim were talking about that beforehand. So one of the questions that Ms. Butler asked me is, should we be spending the money on these foreign conflicts, whether it is Russia or whether it is Israel? And if we should be spending it, why should we be spending it when we have these problems of our own, whether that's around housing or whether that's around food or a number of other things? I definitely want to hear from you, Sasha. But before I get to you, Sasha, what is your answer, Kim? Because like I said, I definitely gave the answer that I feel that we are involved in a global world and we have to be concerned about global issues and all in that space. But I don't know that I'm overly comfortable with some of the policing that we do in the world and all in that space. Now, there are some extreme cases, and I would definitely put Ukraine and Israel into those cases where we probably have to be more engaged because they are allies. But we've also known that we've trained allies, including like Nicaragua, that have flipped their back on us or flipped the script on us, and all along those lines. So we trained them, and then they turned around and became our enemies, and all in that space. There's even some people that say that we might have trained part of Hamas, and we definitely trained part of the 9/11 attack. If we want to go back to 2001 and all in that space. But I just wanted your thoughts when people ask that question, because I'm sure you get it even from your friends and everything, because it was on a audio interview that Miss Butler does and all in that space that was on earlier this afternoon.
What was the question that they asked her?
But they asked me, they were asking me because I was the guest and everything, whether we should be, with the issues we have in our population, should we be spending money in other countries? Because we've got issues like housing that me and you were talking about earlier, and these issues need some of the money that we're spending on foreign affairs and everything. So what would be your answer to that question?
You know, there's a fine balance there of our foreign relationships with other countries, and but right now, I think sometimes you need to fix your own home first before you can continue helping other people. And, you know, the Republican supremacist party keeps sitting there crying, you know, that we're so far in debt, we can't get ourselves out. It's all Biden's fault. Well, then fine. Okay, let's home in and fix those problems and stop worrying about other countries right now. And once we fix those problems, then, you know, go fix the other problems, help the other people. You can be doing a little bit of both at the same time, but we're, you know, according to the Republican Party, we're in such a big mess that, you know, we really shouldn't. If it's as bad as the Republican supremacists say it is, then we don't need to be going out and fixing other people's problems. We need to be fixing our own. Now, if it's not that bad, then we need to sit down and take a look at everything and make a budget and figure it out. But right now, we just seem to be writing checks here, writing checks there. You know, we wrote billions of dollars in PPP loans and never made anyone pay it back. And nobody really used it. 35% used it to offset the employment. So, I mean, we need to figure out what we're spending our money on before we go and do it. And this knee-jerk spending has got to stop. So, we need to help the other countries so that we unite. And, you know, when we're in trouble, they help us. But, you know, it's just a big mess right now. And we just need to fix ourselves first.
What is your thought, Sasha? Like I said, I definitely said that there was probably need, particularly those countries that are fighting against some very serious enemies and some enemies that are not necessarily in the West interest or in the interest of the United States and all in that space. But there are a number of critics, including those around the United States, that are asking, as Kim just alluded to, about the money. And this particular host asked me that question and everything. So what is your thoughts? And I've heard you say before that this is kind of like the brave defense that the Ukrainians are given for the entire Western world, and that they are laying their life on the line, and that they are the defenders of Western liberty, is the kind of notion that I've heard you say before. And if I'm misquoting you, then correct me and everything. But I've heard you kind of like give that statement and everything. But I'd love to hear your thoughts to those that are wondering about the money that is being spent and why we should not be spending it on things that are of concern here in the United States.
The major question is what United States get for each dollar it sends to Ukraine? Is it a charity simply that, okay, we're We just feel that, well, why don't you send Ukrainians some money? Okay, they will have a better lives, they will have better food, maybe better automobiles, and so on. Okay. However, I think the question is much deeper than that. According to professors, such as, for example, great John Mersheimer, who is a real politics person, he believes, and I think Adam would well qualify to be in his camp, he believes in a theory of real politics. It means a big and strong country should overpower smaller and weaker countries. And if it's not that way, then it's a great upsetting situation which can create a great world disasters. And for example, if Ukraine decided to oppose Russia, which is a nuclear power country, then why US is meddling around? Why US would just stay away, wait until Russia will crush Ukraine, and they say to Russia, to Putin, look, we helped you out. Of course, we could defend Ukraine. We have enough the Patriot missiles and HIMARS and F-16s, and if you would send it all to Ukraine and very quickly, we would crush you. But we decided to help you. We love you, and we want to be together with you. So now enjoy yourself, eat Ukraine for breakfast and lunch and dinner. Enjoy yourself. And this is a music to the ears of Putin. It's a great scenario, by the way. The only problem is, as I said earlier, Germany is now preparing for a Russian attack, which, if Ukraine will be able to sustain itself at least for next year, then Germany has 3 to 7 years to prepare. If it's Ukraine will fall in next few months, then Germany has only 1 to 3 years. So what United States is going to do? So on the way to get to Germany, because they have to go through Baltic states, which is not a great thing. They can overrun Baltic states in a matter of about maybe 3 days, say 2.5 days. And Poland is different story. Poland will fight until the last alive soldier. But Russian will overrun Poland in a matter of probably, I would say, 9 months. And as long as Poland will be able to fight Russia so fiercely, then Germany will have maybe another 6 months to prepare. But anyway, the day will come when Germany will have to face Russia. And what is United States going to do? According to Article 5 of NATO, the US has to get involved well before the Germany will be attacked by Russians. It's when Baltic states will be attacked and taken over, and Poland will be attacked and fight Russia for several months, maybe even a year. So US already then have to be involved, unless there will be some genius, strategic genius like Donald Trump, who will say, you know what, we don't need NATO, we don't need Poland, we don't need Germany, we don't need France, we don't need anything, anybody. We want to stay where we are. We are a fortress. Oh, really? Are you a fortress? When Russia, which is now already united, North Korea, Iran, China, BRICS countries, which includes China, of course, and all that stuff, and they will create currency, gold-baked currency. US dollar will be nothing. And nobody will accept it even at any value, because it's not
It'll be interesting to see what happens with BRICS and everything. Adam, I'm glad you joined us, and all along those lines. And one of the things that we were talking about was immigration. I know we talked before about immigration, not just in the United States, but around the world as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I was actually going to bring up two things. One involving Mr. Trump, since Sasha brought him up, and all along those lines. The other is a notion of the big countries that are powerful then squashing the small countries. And there are some people that might argue that that is what colonialism was all about when a number of the European countries divided up Africa and so even Asia and other parts of the world. And now there is a notion of neo-colonialism. And some people might say that that is what China is doing and all in that space. But then the other news that I had mentioned briefly to Kim and everything, and there's another one that I've got to joke with you about before we end this show and everything. But before I get to that, is this notion of the bullet. You know, there's the notion of the bullet that'll get you in any war or any investigation. And apparently, right now, one of Trump's attorneys has come out and said that she warned Mr. Trump that if he took those items to Mar-a-Lago, that could be problematic. And now there are some people that are speculated that that could be the bullet that leads to the conviction and all in that space. So definitely any of your thoughts, if you've been hearing about this case, because there are some folks that are saying game over because of this particular attorney has come out and stated that she had warned Mr. Trump about taking these documents to Mar-a-Lago and that it could be problematic. And apparently they're saying that that's the bullseye that the prosecutors needed and all in that space. So I didn't know if you've been following this case and if you had heard about what was going on in that space and if that is the bullseye that folks needed if they're going to get him to be convicted of these kind of obstruction of justice charges and other kind of charges that are being pursued, and not just in Florida, but in other parts of the country as well. I know you're avid Trump and Putin supporter as well, but they are saying there was a article that was with CNN legal analyst Eli Honig and all in that space. And apparently it was Trump attorney Jennifer Little that told a grand jury that she very clearly warned the ex-president that he must comply with the federal subpoena for the classified documents he took home from the White House. And she's absolutely certain that he understood that failure to do so would be a crime. Testimony that stunned that analyst that I mentioned earlier and everything. So apparently there are folks that are saying that this is a bullseye in terms of obstruction of justice. You're the legal person, Nick's not here. So you're one that is a practicing attorney. Is it a real bullseye? Is it real damning evidence? Or is it just more junk that'll get swept underneath the rug and it won't prove to have any traction?
I don't trust any attorney who reveals confidential conversations with a client, so she has no credibility in my opinion. Number two, clients disagree with their attorney's advice all the time. The fact that she said something doesn't mean it was right or legally correct. And the indictments generally against Trump are political, and they represent the politicization of the legal profession. And it's a real shame, especially the one in Atlanta and the one in Washington, D.C. Trump will either be acquitted or his convictions will be overturned on appeal. The strongest indictment is the one in Florida, but if he's convicted, it's not going to be really that big of a deal. It's not going to go to prison, and it's going to go away. So this attorney that you mentioned, I give no credibility to. As far as immigration goes, I think we need to do three things. Secure the border, give amnesty to people that are already here, and we need to have people immigrating to this country who are smart, who can actually be productive citizens and contribute to the economic and social life of this country. As far as bullies in foreign policy, I wouldn't characterize Russia as a bully any more than I would characterize the U.S. as a bully. I mean, what do you mean by a bully? You mean that the stronger countries take advantage of weaker countries? Of course they do. They did that. We did that in Vietnam. We did that in Iraq. Okay. Now, as far as Russia goes, I still maintain the problem is the expansion of NATO eastward to Russia's borders. What I think is going to happen is it's going to be a stalemate. I think it's going to be a stalemate. And I don't think there's going to be any winners in the situation. And ultimately, I think a compromise will be reached. And I don't see Russia going after Poland or Germany. And if Russia did do that, it would spell big problems for Putin and the Russian regime as it should.
Adam, but look at the map. Look at the Russia, which is 1/6 of all Earth's territory. And look at Ukraine, which is probably 20 times smaller than Russia. Population-wise, it's 4 times smaller than Russia. No nuclear weapons. And for 2 years almost, Russia cannot do anything against Ukraine. What a joke.
Right, I agree with you.
Russia was perceived as the second army in the world after US. Now today is the second army in Ukraine. Okay. That's what it is. It's the biggest joke that I ever could think about it. And you
Like
know,
us in Vietnam.
well, Vietnam was so far away from.
I know that's the problem. Ukraine joining NATO would be a red line that cannot be crossed. Ukraine has to disavow any desire to join NATO, and then there'll be a
But think about something. Ukraine can stop Russia and fight it on equal terms for almost 2 years without being member of NATO. So what can you imagine will happen if Ukraine will join NATO? What Russia will have to just leave their pants in Ukraine and everything else, whatever they have, and just run. There are a lot of people already running out of the Ukrainian army. They already have, most of them, Ukrainians supply a special phone number if you want to give up. So they guarantee that you will be treated well and so on, according to international laws or so on. And a lot of people, they are waiting for a moment to give up and join Ukrainians.
Well, yeah, Russia's not going to defeat Ukraine because Russia is not a bully, and that kind of proves my point. What Russia is upset about is the eastward expansion of NATO up to its border, and I can understand why they would see that as a threat to its security.
But Adam, what entitles Russia to have their bloody mouth open and say that they will decide who will join NATO? For example, Finland, which have 1,000 kilometers border with Russia, they joined NATO, and Russia didn't have a word. They didn't give a damn. Oh, Ukraine is a different story. You know why? Because they perceived that Ukraine, by joining NATO and European unions, in say 5, maybe 10 years, they will become a normal country. I witnessed what's happened to Poland. I had business in Poland in the 90s. I was traveling there 2-3 times a year for sure. And I saw how Poland, which was much poorer than Ukraine,
Yeah.
there was no comparison. And you can see what's Poland today. It's thriving economy. It's a way of life. It's very similar to any European countries. If you will go to Poland, to Warsaw or Krakow, there's not much difference than if you will go to Berlin or Frankfurt or any other European city. And this is what Russians hate when half of the population, they even don't have a normal toilet. They have to go outside. In a winter with minus 40, they have to go outside to the toilet. This is what Russia, this is what your friend Putin.
I know. I miss the old Soviet Union tremendously. I really do.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Russia used to be a world power. It's unfortunate.
No. It was image. They created image. When there was a Cuban crisis, they had only 2 warheads, and they were playing their hand like they would have, say, 50 warheads or 70.
Right, but you say that
They're liars and idiots. That's all what they are.
Well, I mean, the Russian
And
people.
it wouldn't be, by the way, if it wouldn't be for Kissinger, Soviet Union would collapse 20 years earlier, maybe 25.
Well,
Kissinger.
when you talk about Russia, when you talk about Russia invading Ukraine, imagine if the U.S. had 10 Cubas on the eastern seaboard. What do you think we would do? Okay, that's the problem. NATO is the problem here, and the and the pro-democratic forces that are on Russia's border.
U.S. and Russia. U.S. is a real power, superpower, if you will. Okay, Russia is not. It's being perceived by fools like Kissinger that Russia is a great power. We have to have detente with Russia. We have to.
You're right. We proved that they weren't. You're right. And so that's why I understand why Russia, because it's in such a weakened position, would invade Ukraine, because they don't need pro-democracy countries joining NATO on their border because it's a threat to their national security. And Putin had every right to do what he did. We would have done the exact same thing. We've done the same thing, and we've committed far more atrocities than Putin ever has. And I want to tell Mr. Putin right now, you have my support, and you have the United States support. You will be President Trump.
Excellent. I love you. Adam, United States could do something, whatever they did in Vietnam or Iraq or Iran or any other place in the world, because United States have authority and they have a power that they could accomplish what they wanted to accomplish.
You're correct.
They had means. The Russian fools don't have means there. Yap. No NATO. Ukraine is gonna be NATO. Okay.
You're correct.
Okay, implement your power. Prove it who you are and what you are. Fools and idiots. That's all what they were able to prove. It doesn't matter what will be the end of this war in Ukraine. Maybe it will be armistice. Maybe some kind.
That's why my sympathies go out to Mr. Putin for all the suffering he's had to endure. His country has been weakened. While NATO has pushed eastward on their border, and Ukraine was the last domino to fall. They did what they had to do to stand up for their national security and the integrity of their country. And even though they were weak, and it shows, as you are correct, I would have done the exact same thing Putin did.
Let me ask you this question: If
and as far as U.S. goes, Sasha, the U.S. has authority, but certainly not moral authority. The way we raped, killed children in Vietnam, 300,000 Iraqis dead under George Bush's false pretense of a war. It's disgusting. Mr. Putin never did anything. And if Mr. Putin is doing something now, it's because he doesn't want to be surrounded by pro-democracy forces and that ridiculous excuse for an organization called NATO that has expanded too far. And the U.S. is to blame for that. We should be trying to partner with Putin and strengthen Russia, not weaken it.
Adam, you're very ill-informed about Russian atrocities, what they've done in Ukraine.
Well, I would agree with no. Okay, fair enough. I would agree with you that they have committed atrocities. Certainly, I misstated that. You're correct.
Politically, what do you think we should be doing to correct we've got wars popping up everywhere, just to maybe help settle the issue with Russia and Ukraine? I mean, we've got, unfortunately, the same two idiots running for office. Who do you think will be able to manage that situation and get it back to maybe where it's not a war anymore?
Well, you're right, Kim. Everything starts from the head. If you look at the Biden, it seems to me he is a very experienced politician, but his best days are over a long time ago. Today, when you feel just his appearance, it seems to me that all he's dreaming during the day is to get to bed and have a glass of hot milk. And maybe with honey, maybe without, and all his preferences. But I think that's all what he's dreaming all day, how to get to bed and get this glass of hot milk. And therefore, you see absolutely incredible situation. Look, okay, October 7th, atrocities in Israel, incredible thing. So Biden, 100% behind Israel. He sends to avia carrier groups and there's all the way help, 100%, so on. Now, a month later, a few weeks later, now, all of a sudden he understands that because of the social media effect, and because of the whole world is behind Palestinians. Why is that happened? Is because again, I can allow myself not to be politically correct and say certain things that most of the people will disagree. One of the things is that most people in the world are morons and stupid idiots, although some of them are useful idiots, but still idiots. So because of that, all of a sudden, Biden became horrified that because of all that, he is going to lose election. Because all these people on social media, all the Black Lives Matter people and all others, they're all against Israel. There's a great amount of anti-Semitism everywhere, all the U.S. including. So now he understands, okay, that's all fine. I love Israel, I love them. But I'm going to lose election. So Israel will eventually win against Hamas, obviously, but there will be no Joe Biden in the office. And not only that, I will lose $500 as a result of it. So obviously, I'm much against what's happening right now. But Biden has no resolve. And you know what, with his age, and he wants somehow, well, okay, maybe these people will, okay, Qatar, maybe they will talk to these people, and these people will talk to that people, and finally there will be some kind of a peace, and I will be around, and I will say that I talked to Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Israel and even Hamas maybe, or some on a good day. So, and he will say that, okay, this is peace. I brought you a peace. Then what's next after the peace? Well, it's a two-state solution. Okay, how you will do two-state solution? Show me. Okay, you know what? I had a good example on one of the programs. I said, let's see, Adam, you say that it's a good idea to fly to Jupiter and back. And you go to venture capitalist and say, okay, I have a great idea. Could you back me? Say, yes, it's a great idea, Adam. We are going to give you a lot of money to do that. Can you come up with a business plan, how you are going to accomplish that? So, okay, it's day 1, day 2, day 5, day 76, and so on. And you're preparing business plan, but soon, probably if you're not stupid, after a week time of working on that, you will understand that there is no technology in the world exists today to send a spaceship to Jupiter. It's even unclear how you will land on Jupiter and how you will return back. So after a week, 2 weeks, say maybe 6 months working on that plan, you will come to the idea that it's mission impossible, okay? So now, when people are talking about two-state solution, all I'm asking is, prepare a little business plan. What you're going to do on day 1, day 2, day 5, day 75, day 376. Where are you going to be on each of these days? What are your accomplishes during this time? And whether it's feasible or not at all. Nobody wants to think about it. All stupid idiots talking about two-state solution. Okay, we got it. Two-state solution. That's it.
Well,
One-state solution is already there for 75 years. So now you have second state. Where? How? You're talking about tribes who don't know nothing about the creating a state, the management, medicine, education. They don't have basic knowledge about anything. How
Yeah.
you want to create second state?
yeah, well, what I've said on this show is that I think that the only solution is a two-state solution. But I've also said is that that's not going to happen because of precisely the reasons that you stated. As a practical matter, it's never going to happen because the Palestinians are never going to agree to that. And we saw that with Arafat and the 2000 Camp David summit. So what the real solution is going to be, it's going to be more of the same. Things aren't going to change. Okay, it's going to be more of the same that we have to contain because there's never going to be a two-state solution because the Palestinians are not negotiating in good faith. And so expect more of the same for many decades going forward. And the only thing that we can do is contain it to the best of our ability. But I think at the end of the day, the first step is eliminating Hamas. But no, I do agree. A two-state solution is not going to work.
And you know, main reason why it's not going to work? As a lawyer, you must understand the concept of follow the money. So if Qatar sends $100 million, Saudi Arabia stays the same. United States sends a lot of money to Gaza, for example, and West Bank as well. And Canada sends, and all European countries sends, and so on. And all of a sudden, the Palestinians today, they have no bread, no water, no electricity, absolutely nothing. And there are a few people in Qatar, the billionaires from Hamas. One is worth $4 billion. Another one, $4 billion. Another one is $5 billion. It's three the richest, but there are several others. That's where all the money going. So they don't need peace, because if there will be a peace and they will start build something and there will be a better control of the money, how they
Yes.
their billions.
So what's going to happen ultimately is there's going to be a de facto peace. The movie War Games, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie War Games, but the point of the movie War Games was in nuclear war, no matter how much you strategize, there can't be any winner. I think what they're going to realize is, look, we have to live together. There's going to be no winner in this situation. So they're going to de facto coexist in a very fragile region. But will there be a two-state solution? No. Should there be? Yes. But it's not going to happen because there's no incentive for the Palestinian leaders to do so. And that's why Arafat didn't do what he did. And if you look at it from that perspective, it doesn't seem as unreasonable because, like I said, he had no incentive. But what they do have an incentive to do is to avoid instability and avoid any threats to their monetary interests. So I think what that's going to lead to is the conclusion that, look, fighting each other is not going to lead to any more of a positive outcome than if we just tolerate each other. So it's going to be a fragile peace with periodic violence going forward, in my view.
Well, I
Yes.
don't think
Hey, Adam.
it's a very interesting situation right now. What's going to be a continuation of Israel's invasion of Gaza? What makes it so interesting is that right now, as what I said before, obviously Biden is absolutely against Israel to continue its invasion of Gaza. For obvious reasons, he's going to lose election. And it's a serious reason, really. Now, Israel, the public opinion in Israel is 99.9999%, whatever you want to take it, to continue invasion and clear up Hamas one way or another. There will be no stability in the region until Hamas will be completely eliminated, eradicated, or simply not longer existing. Now, can Israel do it technically from military point of view or so on? Remains to be seen. I'm not so sure anymore. Maybe it's unable to do it. Maybe it is. If it is, it must do it. Because if you remember as an Italian, you remember that the demise of Roman Empire started in about...
Tragic.
It started with the inability of Romans to control German tribes. When they couldn't defeat German tribes once and twice and three times and so on, slowly they started to move south, and then they were joined by Vandals and Goths, and East Goths and West Goths, and Franks, and just all kind of people around Rome, and eventually Rome had to cave in. Okay, so if Israel cannot control the territories that potentially can be used to attack Israel, so Israel has no purpose to exist. Because the only purpose why Israel exists, its government, is to protect Jews from another Holocaust. There was no Israel during the Holocaust, so they were all killed, 6 million people, if not longer, if no more. Okay, there was no other way to fight this.
Right. Well, I mean, part of the problem is you have academics, you have politicians, you have leaders in the U.S. advocating for a two-state solution. Now, I've even advocated for that, but unlike them, I realize it's idealistic and is not going to happen. So the only thing that's going to happen, Israel should take out Hamas to the best of their ability. What they did was disgusting. What they did to the Israelis was appalling to, I don't even know what word to choose for it. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the people in that region who are going to say there's no purpose to this. There is no purpose to this whatsoever, and there's going to be a de facto peace, in my view, because the alternative to that is going to be what we have now. And I think Hamas will be substantially eradicated by Israel, but I also think that Hamas will lose the favor of Palestinians because people are just going to want to throw their hands up, I think, and say, like the movie War Games, this is a futile endeavor. Let's just coexist the best we can. I mean, is there a better solution? I don't think there is.
You know that many Arab countries, like Saudi Arabia, many others, they are so disgusted by what Hamas did that they don't want to even hear the name Hamas. You just say that it's probably even worse than Hitler because it's close to them. It's Arabian people, Arabs, and yet they did absolutely horrific things.
They're disgusting. They're disgusting.
there are no words to describe. But however, now a lot of people thinking, okay, so you have issues with Hamas, okay, you have right to defend your country and you have eradicate Hamas, okay. But Palestinians, it's a completely different story. They are not guilty of anything. They're just victims. Okay, here's what I'm trying to understand. If indeed Palestinians are victims of Hamas and Israel is trying to eradicate Hamas, so Israel is trying to help Palestinians because Palestinians are scared of Hamas. They cannot do anything because they're scared that they're going to try to get some more freedom or so on. So Hamas will go after them and will kill them all or so on. So now Israel is trying to eradicate Hamas. So Palestinians supposedly will be free without Hamas. They can now at least try to do something with their country, with their people. I don't know what it might be. Why wouldn't Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and others help them to really maybe build some kind of a government? Maybe.
I think they will, and I think that Hamas's big strategic error was thinking the Palestinians would support the atrocities that they did. And I think what it's going to have the result of doing is the Palestinians turning, if they have any sense, turning on Hamas, and combined with Israel's eradication of Hamas, there's going to be a situation where people are going to realize we have to coexist together. It kind of reminds me of segregation in the South in the 1940s and 1950s and the horrific racism that occurred here in states like Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama. The U.S. Supreme Court made decisions that promoted integration, and there were all these policies. But what really, really led to peace between whites and blacks was they realized we have to live together. We may be different, but we have to live together. And the best way to live together and prosper individually is to coexist and to respect each other and to reject any type of violence, any type of racism, any type of segregation. I think that's the human instinct is going to be preservation. And what does preservation mean? It means freedom from violence, freedom from this tension, freedom from fear of your life, freedom from fear of terrorism, and freedom from fear of having a future that you're always living under threat. So I think the people are going to make that decision. And I think Hamas is going to die either through force or by the will of the people that it claims to lead, the Palestinians.
I just want to intervene here just a little bit to kind of put a little perspective or a different spin on this. You know, you're assuming that the Palestinians hear the same stories we hear. You're assuming that they don't fear Israel, which they have every reason to fear them because for years Israel has attacked them and they've had no good relationships. And you're assuming that they know for a fact that if they turn on Hamas, that the world will embrace them. You're assuming a lot of things that they don't get the same news you get. They don't hear the same messages you hear. So how are they supposed to know that this is going to be good for them? How are they supposed to know that? Are you sending in pigeons and letting them know this?
It's a really, really good question. I think what I'm assuming is that people are going to act in their self-interest. And their self-interest is going to be to preserve themselves and their ability to live the freest and most prosperous life they can. And they're not going to do so in a culture of violence, in a culture of fear, and where there are these atrocities occurring. I think what they're going to say is our best path to our own self-interest is through peace, even if it's not a formal peace. And I think that that's where we're going to go. Now, is there still going to be terrorist attacks or some violence? Probably. But I think we're getting to a point where what Hamas did actually was probably one of the, this may sound crazy, was one of the most constructive things for that region. Because what Hamas did has probably alienated the Palestinians and pushed to the forefront the need to really act in your self-interest and say, no, this is not the way.
Adam, you know, if you remember history of Second World War, the Germans, all of them were convinced that Hitler is a great leader and he's doing wonderful things for Germany until they is the very end of the war. And it took, even with the Nuremberg process and so on, and Germans had to go to see the concentration camps. They were traveling to Auschwitz, and so on and on and on. It took 20 years, so it means a generation, until Germans changed to such a degree that any thoughts about recreating this horrible regime of Hitler became impossible. But it took 20 years and huge defeat in Second World War plus 20 years. That's what's happened. Now, interestingly enough, again, you know that from history, that the best situation to have really great peace and long one is when one side decisively wins against the other side. So when, for example, Germany was defeated in the First World War, okay, so there were certain arrangements, accommodations, but Germany was able to bring up their power back. And there was a Second World War, and Germany was defeated to such a way that it can no longer, now it's already, 80 years since the end of Second World War, and it will be another 80 years that Germany will not be able and will not even think about starting Second, Third World War, or Fourth, or whatever it might be. So in order to successfully have a peace in that region, maybe one of the points is if one side will decisively win this war, either it will be Jews or maybe it will be Hamas.
Oh, it's not going to be.
Okay, but wait a sec. Let's think about something. That's a real war. Remember when Second World War, when Germany was fighting Allied forces in Russia, and there were bombardments of Dresden and Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it was all horrible and terrible. But it's a war. You cannot fight the war without. Obviously, there is collateral damage. So-called mildly, I'm trying to be nice about it. It's much more than collateral damage, at least during Second World War. Now, here are two, one nation or one Hamas. What is it? It's not a nation, right? It's a government. It's not a government. It's whatever, but it's something based in Gaza. That's something in Gaza.
I don't know what to call it.
Okay, you call it any way you want. I don't care. So something based in Gaza attacked Israel, creating a new war. Let them fight it out. Let them fight it out, and one side will decisively eradicate and completely destroy the other side. Then it creates a condition for a long-lasting peace.
Yes, that's true. That's the second possibility, whereby Israel decisively, eradicates Hamas, and that does create a long-lasting peace. I also think, though, that the strategic mistake that Hamas made is that the entire narrative among the Palestinians is that Israel's the aggressor and they're the oppressed. When Hamas took on the role as the aggressor, I think that changed the narrative. And I think in the minds of the Palestinians, or I would hope, that the reason why this is happening is not because of anything Israel did, it's because of what Hamas did. And that created a fracture with Hamas that has isolated Hamas. And if you eradicate Hamas, coupled with the idea among the Palestinians that the only way forward is to coexist, I think you're going to have a long-lasting peace. So it's a combination of the two, I think.
Well, and we are at the top of the hour, and this has just been the most amazing conversation. Trying to understand what is actually going on in the world, but how, we can actually maybe isolate some of the problems. What are our options? And we'll see you guys next Tuesday. Thank you very much and have a wonderful and safe weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.